Joseph Dennis Cole was born on April 10, 1961 in Los Angeles County, California, into a family deeply entrenched in the entertainment industry. His father was Dennis Cole, a prominent television actor who appeared in popular shows including The Young and the Restless, Fantasy Island, and The Fall Guy. His mother was Sally Bergeron, Dennis Cole's first wife. Dennis later married actress Jacqueline Smith of Charlie's Angels. Despite his privileged upbringing surrounded by successful figures within the entertainment industry, Joe chose a different path from traditional Hollywood stardom. While he did pursue some acting work, his true passion lay in the underground music scene. Joe became deeply embedded in the punk and alternative rock communities, working as a roadie for several prominent bands including Black Flag, Rollins Band, and Hole. He was particularly close to Hole, having filmed the band's 1991 tour performances. According to David Crouch, manager of Rhino Records in Westwood, Cole was, quote, a popular figure in the alternative music scene who had been a confidant and right-hand man to the musicians in Black Flag. At the time of the incident, Joe was romantically involved with Michelle Leon, the bassist for the band Babes in Toyland. He was also pursuing filmmaking interests beyond his music work, collaborating with his best friend Henry Rollins on a documentary project about homeless Vietnam veterans in Venice Beach. In 1991, Cole and Rollins were sharing a home at 809 Brooks Avenue in the Oakwood district of Venice Beach, California. Oakwood was notoriously dangerous, earning the nickname Ghost Town due to its mounting crime-related death toll. The neighborhood was dominated by the Venice Shoreline Crips gang and had one of the highest violent crime rates in the LAPD's Pacific Division. As Rollins described it in interviews, Venice is like one big small neighborhood. No one ever talks to each other, but everyone knows who everyone is. He also mentioned several unwritten territorial rules. There is an unwritten law in Venice. I lived on Brooks Avenue, which bisects 5th and a big part of the middle of Venice called Ghost Town. It's like the Crips. Crack, guns, dead bodies, helicopters, high-speed chases. Despite the obvious dangers, Cole and Rollins chose to live in this area specifically because of their previously mentioned documentary project. Their proximity to the subjects they were filming was essential for the authenticity of their work. Rollins later admitted he had grown increasingly nervous about their safety. At one point, he had written in his journal that he was certain their house was, quote, going to get popped after music producer Rick Rubin visited while driving a conspicuous Rolls-Royce and carrying a portable phone. This display of wealth in such a dangerous neighborhood likely attracted criminal attention to their residents. On the evening of December 19th, 1991, the two attended a Hole concert at the historic Whiskey A Go-Go in West Hollywood. After the show, around 12:40 a.m. on December 20th, they made a routine stop at the Boys Market on Lincoln Boulevard, an all-night grocery store just about a block and a half from their home. The two men were carrying bags of groceries and walking home along their usual route when they were suddenly confronted by two armed men described as African American males in their 20s. The encounter began as what appeared to be a standard street robbery. One robber forced Rollins to his knees while the other made Cole lie face down on the ground. Both victims had guns pointed at their heads and were warned not to scream or they would be killed. The robbers searched them for money but discovered they only had approximately $50 between them. This angered the perpetrators, who then demanded that Cole and Rollins take them to their house to retrieve more cash or valuables. The four men walked the short distance from the grocery store to the duplex. Upon arrival, Rollins was ordered inside the house at gunpoint to retrieve money, while Cole was forced to remain outside with one of the gunmen. As Rollins recalled in interviews, the guy who was on me said, "If you yell or if you scream, I'm going to blow your head off." And I said, "Okay," and went in. Once inside the house, Rollins heard a gunshot behind him. Cole was shot in the face at close range, dying instantly. The gunman also fired shots at Rollins inside the house, but the bullets ricocheted off the walls and missed him. Rollins then ran straight through the house and escaped out the back door. He then doubled back and immediately called the police from a neighbor's phone. Police arrived within minutes, but Cole was already dead at the scene. By that time, the killers had left the residence. The murder investigation was led by Detective Bill Cox. Despite extensive efforts, the case presented numerous challenges that ultimately prevented successful prosecution. Investigators worked thousands of hours and interviewed hundreds of people in the neighborhood, but were unable to develop solid leads. Initially, Rollins became a prime suspect and was detained for approximately 10 hours of questioning. Police suggested that he and Cole were involved in substance dealing, accusations that Rollins vehemently denied, stating that the strongest thing that came into our house was Tylenol and coffee. Rollins described the interrogation as particularly hostile, with officers asking about cocaine trafficking despite his complete lack of involvement with such substances. He was eventually cleared as a suspect when his story was corroborated and no evidence linked him to the crime. One suspect was approximately 5 feet 11 inches tall and 165 pounds, with brown eyes and black hair. Police created a composite drawing from Rollins' statements, but this led to no arrests. Adding to the difficult dynamics of the case, residents were generally reluctant to cooperate with police due to the ongoing tensions between the community and authorities. Witness intimidation was a constant concern as the dangerous nature of the neighborhood meant potential witnesses feared retaliation for providing information to police. The crime scene yielded limited forensic evidence and the perpetrators appeared to have planned their escape route carefully. Additionally, the area's heavy gang presence created multiple layers of criminal activity that obscured the investigation. The case received significant media attention, partly due to Joe Cole's family connections and his involvement in the punk music scene. Most notably, the case was featured on NBC's Unsolved Mysteries television program, which brought national attention to the crime. Henry Rollins appeared on the show in 1996, hoping to generate new leads and information about the perpetrators. The television exposure helped to keep the case in the public eye, but did not result in any arrests. A $25,000 reward was also offered for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the killers. The incident went on to profoundly traumatize Rollins. His survival guilt and grief manifested in several disturbing ways that he later discussed publicly. In a 1992 interview with the Los Angeles Times, Rollins revealed that he had collected soil soaked with Cole's blood from the murder scene. "I dug up all of the earth where his head fell, he was shot in the face, and I've got all the dirt here. I say good morning to him every day. I got his phone too, so I got a direct line to him, so that feels good. Sometimes when I catch myself having a really good time or enjoying something, I have a tendency to check myself and say, should I really be grinning this much?" He also grappled with finding meaning in the senseless violence. "I don't believe in karma, I don't believe in any of that, because my friend died for nothing. I can't find a single reason why he died except that someone shot him and that's it." The day after the murder, Rollins moved out of the area, relocating to Hollywood for obvious reasons. As for Cole's father, he had this to say regarding his son's murder: "There is not a day that goes by that I don't think about him, and we've always shared things, and it's like I have no one to call up and say, hey Joe, guess what happened? And he would do the same thing with me, and it's like a part of your heart was just taken and pulled out." Following his son's death, Dennis Cole became an activist against violence on television, believing that media portrayals of violence contributed to real-world brutality. This advocacy work gave him a constructive outlet for his grief while honoring his son's memory through efforts to prevent similar tragedies. Dennis continued his fight for justice and his anti-violence advocacy work until his death in November 2009 at age 69. He died never knowing who had killed his son, carrying that burden for nearly 18 years until his own passing. David Thomas Chase was a 42-year-old cabinet maker and skilled craftsman who lived in Evergreen, Colorado. He resided with his wife Judy and 2 foster children whom the couple was in the process of adopting. David was described as an experienced mountaineer and outdoorsman who was fanatical about environmental protection and keeping wilderness areas pristine. David's expertise in mountain climbing and his deep knowledge of environmental hazards would later become crucial factors in understanding why his alleged behavior on the night of his disappearance seemed so implausible to those who knew him. On the morning of June 6, 1995, David was scheduled to complete a roofing project with his neighbor Matt Orahosky, a local handyman who was 7 years younger than David. The two men had worked together on various odd jobs, though Judy had specifically asked her husband not to continue working with Matt due to his reputation for heavy drinking and getting into fights. David had promised his wife that this would be the final time that the two would work together. The day began routinely as David and Matt finished their roofing work at the local Elks Club and cleared brush from the property, completing the job by noon. After lunch, they made a crucial stop at the bank, where David cashed a check for $1,800, an advance payment for an upcoming project. With this substantial amount of cash in his possession, David and Matt proceeded to a local bar called On the Rocks for drinks. According to the timeline established by various sources, the men spent the afternoon and early evening at the bar. However, when David failed to return home that night, Judy became increasingly concerned. Her worry deepened when he still hadn't returned by the following morning, as this behavior was completely out of character for her husband. When she went to Matt's house on the morning of June 7th, seeking information about her husband's whereabouts, she received the first of what would become multiple conflicting accounts of the previous evening's events. Initially, Matt told Judy that he had left David at the bar playing pool and had gone home alone. However, the story became more complex and suspicious when Matt's girlfriend called Judy later that same morning with a different version of events. According to this account, Matt had told his girlfriend that David had claimed to own a raft and had decided to go swimming in Bear Creek River, which flowed adjacent to the bar. This explanation immediately struck Judy as completely implausible and impossible. As Judy later explained to investigators and media outlets, her husband was an experienced mountaineer who had extensively studied hypothermia and would have been fully aware of the deadly dangers posed by jumping into a snow-fed river. The Bear Creek River was frigid, running with snowmelt, and the weather conditions in early June 1995 were particularly harsh due to record snowfall that spring. The idea that David would voluntarily enter such water was, in Judy's words, absolutely completely impossible to believe. Recognizing the implausible nature of this explanation and deeply concerned for her husband's safety, Judy contacted law enforcement to report David missing and express her suspicions about Matt's story. When Sergeant Brian Scott questioned Matt, he provided police with essentially the same story he had given to his girlfriend, though with additional details that only raised further suspicions. Matt claimed that he and David had spent most of the day drinking at multiple bars throughout the area, consuming significant amounts of alcohol over an extended period. According to Matt's initial statement to police, the evening culminated at the bar near Bear Creek River, where he claimed they had unloaded brush from their day's work directly into the water. This detail immediately raised red flags with Judy, who knew that David was environmentally conscious and would never dump debris into a waterway. Matt then claimed that David suddenly announced he was going swimming, jumped into the frigid river, and told Matt to, quote, "pick me up in Morrison," before disappearing beneath the surface. Matt's account portrayed David's alleged behavior as spontaneous and inexplicable, claiming he simply left David in the water and drove home without seeking help or alerting authorities. This version of events seemed particularly suspicious given that the location was only yards away from the bar where people were still present, and within 50 feet of a fire station where help could have been immediately summoned. The search for David was complicated by extreme weather conditions that plagued Colorado in the spring and summer of 1995. The state experienced record snowfall through April and May, followed by severe flooding throughout June and July. These harsh conditions hampered search efforts for the missing person. On July 24th, 1995, 6 weeks after David's disappearance, a property caretaker discovered his decomposing body in Bear Creek River approximately 3 miles downstream from where he was last seen. The discovery location among low trees suggested the body had become entangled in vegetation rather than continuing to flow downstream. The autopsy results revealed several deeply disturbing findings that contradicted Matt's claims and strongly suggested foul play. The cause of death was officially ruled consistent with drowning, but toxicology tests revealed no alcohol in David's system at the time of death, despite Matt's claims of day-long drinking. The autopsy also revealed that David's neck had been fractured and unusual cuts were found on both of David's legs. He was found wearing only his shoes and socks, plus part of a pant leg, and evidence indicated that his clothing had been violently torn from his body rather than naturally removed by the water. These findings painted a picture that was entirely inconsistent with Matt's story of David voluntarily jumping into the river while intoxicated. The absence of alcohol was particularly damaging to Matt's credibility, as was the evidence of the broken neck and suspicious injuries. Following the discovery of the body and the revelation of the autopsy findings, police brought Matt in for additional questioning. Under this renewed scrutiny, Matt modified key details of his account, providing what amounted to a substantially different version of events. In this revised story, he now claimed that he and David had left the bar together and driven to dump brush into the river, but that David had accidentally fallen into the water rather than jumping. This represented a significant change from his original account of David's supposedly voluntary entry into the river. Despite this alleged accident occurring in close proximity to potential sources of help, including the bar where people were still present and a fire station located just 50 feet away, Matt claimed he never attempted to summon assistance. Instead, according to his new account, he simply went home and said nothing about the incident until David was reported missing the following day. Additional suspicious circumstances emerged during the expanded investigation. Matt's girlfriend discovered approximately $800 in cash stuffed into the glove compartment of his car. Matt was never able to provide a satisfactory explanation for how he had acquired this sum of money, leading to speculation that it might have been part of David's $1,800 from the bank. The location where Matt claimed the incident occurred was extremely close to sources of immediate assistance, making his failure to seek help highly suspicious. Matt's accounts continued to change under questioning, with investigators noting multiple inconsistencies between his various statements. Approximately 4 months after David's disappearance, the case took a pretty dramatic turn. On October 15, 1995, at around 4 a.m., private investigator Phil Harris claimed he was awakened from sleep by a clear, disembodied voice that stated, "I'm David Chase. I was murdered. I want you to investigate my murder. Go buy the Sunday paper." Harris, initially skeptical of whatever he just experienced, followed the voice's instruction and purchased a Sunday newspaper. When he couldn't find any mention of David Chase in the paper, he discussed the experience with a friend named Janet, who helped him research the case. After learning about David's death and the circumstances surrounding it, Harris made the decision to contact Judy directly. When Harris met with Judy, she was initially and understandably suspicious of his claims. However, her skepticism began to dissolve when Harris revealed intimate details about her relationship with David that only her deceased husband could have known. These included private pet names the couple used for each other, such as Honey Bunny and Suggies, as well as personal details about their relationship and shared experiences. Convinced that Harris might genuinely be receiving communications from her husband, Judy agreed to allow him to investigate the case. Over the following weeks, Phil claimed to receive detailed communications from David's spirit, which provided a comprehensive account of what allegedly transpired on the night of June 6, 1995. According to Harris, these communications revealed a very different version of events than what Matt had claimed. According to the alleged supernatural account, David's spirit claimed that Matt had convinced him to cash the check by suggesting he had a truck David might want to purchase. As they were leaving the bar, David allegedly told Matt he had decided not to buy the truck after all. Matt became furious upon learning David wouldn't be purchasing the truck, as he had been counting on the money. The disagreement escalated into a physical fight, during which Matt's nose was bloodied. During the struggle, Matt struck David in the back of the head with a blunt object, breaking his neck and killing him. Matt had help from an accomplice, possibly someone younger, who assisted in disposing of the body. The accomplice used a knife to cut David's clothing from his body rather than removing it normally, which would have required taking off his boots. The murder weapon and bloody clothing were allegedly thrown into a reservoir, with Matt instructing his accomplice to, quote, throw them as far as he could. Despite the compelling nature of the information allegedly provided by David's spirit, law enforcement officials faced major legal obstacles in using this so-called evidence. However, the investigation did produce concrete law enforcement action based on the circumstantial evidence that had been gathered through conventional means. Homicide investigator Don Olin became convinced that David had been murdered and formally requested an arrest warrant for Matt. Olin sought to charge Matt with criminally negligent homicide based on the inconsistencies in his statements, the suspicious physical evidence, and the implausible nature of his claims about David's behavior. Despite the recommendation and the warrant request, the district attorney's office declined to prosecute the case. The DA's office chose instead to keep the investigation open, effectively leaving the case in limbo without formal charges being filed against Matt. Tragically, Phil Harris's investigation into the case was cut short when he died suddenly of a massive heart attack just weeks after beginning his work. His death occurred only about a week after he had taken Judy to a local reservoir and pointed out areas where he believed the murder weapon and bloody clothing had been dumped. The locations were based on information he claimed to have received from David's spirit. Some observers noted the coincidental nature of the private investigator's sudden death just as he was making progress on the investigation, though there was no evidence of foul play in Harris's death. With Harris gone, the unique supernatural element of the case effectively ended, leaving Judy alone to continue seeking justice for her husband's murder. In the years following David's death and Phil's investigation, Judy developed additional theories about the murder that extended far beyond the immediate circumstances of June 6, 1995. She came to believe that David's death might be connected to a larger criminal conspiracy involving child trafficking and organized pedophile networks. These theories were based on the couple's work as foster parents and their efforts to adopt the twin children who had been living with them. After David's death, the children were removed from Judy's care and she claimed she never heard from them again. She theorized that David might have discovered something about criminal activity involving children, making him a target for murder. Judy also came to believe that Phil had been murdered to prevent him from exposing this larger conspiracy, despite the medical evidence indicating he died of natural causes. Kevin Clewer was a 31-year-old Rockford native who had relocated to Chicago's East Lakeview neighborhood, specifically choosing to live in the Boys Town area, now called North Olmsted, because he wanted to feel safe and surrounded by people like himself. His brother Ron described him as someone with an infectious smile and laugh who worked to ensure everyone around him had fun and felt comfortable. Kevin was openly gay and known as a great convener of people who possessed a natural ability to make others happy. On the evening of March 23, 2004, Kevin went out with his friend John Siracusa to enjoy the nightlife. The pair embarked on a bar-hopping expedition that took them to several popular establishments along North Halsted Street, including Sidetrack, Roscoe's Tavern, and Little Jim's. Little Jim's, which has since been demolished, held particular significance as it was the first gay bar to open in the area back in 1975. During their evening out, Kevin encountered a man who introduced himself as Fernando. Witnesses describe Fernando as a Hispanic male, approximately 25 years old, 5 feet 7 inches tall, with a slim athletic build and a Spanish accent. Multiple witnesses reported that Kevin and Fernando appeared to be very attracted to each other and seemed to have developed an instant connection. As the evening progressed and after John departed, Kevin and Fernando left Little Jim's together, walking toward Kevin's apartment approximately 2 blocks away on North Elaine Place. This marked the last confirmed sighting of Kevin Clewer alive. Kevin lived in a third-floor apartment at 3444 North Elaine Place with a roommate who had stayed home that evening due to early work commitments. The roommate reported hearing multiple voices when Kevin returned home in the middle of the night, though he couldn't determine exactly how many people were present or the specific time. Around 4 a.m., the roommate heard a door close but was uncertain whether this indicated someone entering or leaving the apartment. When the roommate left for work at 6:30 a.m., he noticed nothing unusual and didn't know if Kevin was okay or not at that point. When Kevin failed to show up for work the very next day on March 24th and missed an important meeting with out-of-town clients, his employer contacted his emergency contact, his mother, Pamela Cunningham. After Pamela reached out to her ex-husband and Kevin's father, Jim Clewer, he decided to check on Kevin personally. Jim arrived at Kevin's apartment building and noticed Kevin's car was present, so he made his way to the third-floor unit. Finding the apartment locked, he forced his way inside, where he would stumble upon a disturbing scene. Kevin's naked body was found in his bedroom, covered only by a robe, lying face down in a fetal position. He had been stabbed over 40 times in the back. Chicago police launched an immediate investigation, interviewing Kevin's friends and meticulously reconstructing his final hours. The investigation quickly focused on the mysterious Fernando, who became the prime person of interest in the case. In June, approximately 3 months after the murder, police released a composite sketch of Fernando based on witness descriptions. The sketch depicted a young Hispanic male with distinctive features and was widely distributed throughout the LGBTQ community. However, the delay in releasing this community alert sparked criticism from gay rights advocates who accused the police department of having a gay bias in their handling of the case. Kevin's parents became tireless advocates for their son's case. They distributed tens of thousands of flyers featuring Fernando's sketch throughout Chicago. The couple even marched in the Chicago Pride Parade carrying Fernando's image, using every public opportunity to raise awareness about their son's murder. This journey was particularly saddening for Jim. Initially struggling to accept his son's sexuality, Jim transformed into a vocal gay rights advocate following Kevin's death, though the trauma of finding his son's body haunted him for the rest of his life. In a heartbreaking turn of events, both of Kevin's parents died suddenly within a week of each other in 2005, barely a year after their son's murder. Pamela succumbed to fast-moving cancer that spread to multiple organs despite being cancer-free just months earlier, while Jim died of a heart attack 2 weeks later. Both were 56 years old. Kevin's brother Ron firmly believes that the trauma and stress of Kevin's unsolved murder directly contributed to his parents' deaths. Following his parents' deaths, Ron inherited the mission of seeking justice for his brother. However, as the case approached its 10th anniversary in 2014, Ron admitted to growing frustrated with the lack of progress, stating it just became a realization that this just may never happen. In June 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Ron Clewer decided to revitalize his efforts using social media platforms. He created a Facebook page titled Finding Fernando, a 2004 homicide person of interest, to share his brother's story and republicize Fernando's sketch to reach a broader, younger audience. 2 months later, in August 2020, Ron received a Facebook message that would prove to be the case's most significant breakthrough in over 15 years. The message came from a woman who claimed to know the man who killed Kevin. Crucially, she provided specific details about the case that police had deliberately kept confidential, lending credibility to her claims. According to Ron, the woman identified herself as a former neighbor of the suspect. The detective working the case determined the lead was legitimate and pursued it vigorously. By January 2021, homicide detectives were able to definitively identify the man known as Fernando. The investigation revealed several crucial facts. Fernando was not his real name. He had used this alias specifically when meeting Kevin. His actual name and identity have been established by police but not publicly disclosed. He is of Puerto Rican descent and fled to Puerto Rico shortly after police released his sketch in 2004. Despite relocating, he has returned to Chicago multiple times over the years. He had a documented history of nonviolent offenses, including theft and but was not previously known to be violent. Chicago police detectives actually traveled to Puerto Rico to interview the identified suspect. However, despite this direct contact, the case faced significant legal hurdles in moving forward with prosecution. In a revelation in May 2023, Ron disclosed to Rockford television station YFR that investigators now believe 2 men, not one, were responsible for Kevin's death. This development fundamentally changed the understanding of the case to a premeditated robbery scheme. According to Ron's account, the 2 suspects worked together with a specific modus operandi. They would target individuals at bars who were attracted to one of them, potentially drug their victims, and then rob them. The plan apparently went catastrophically wrong in Kevin's case, escalating to murder. Police believe Fernando was a regular fixture on the Boys Town bar scene in 2004. Despite his involvement in Kevin's murder, investigators suggest that people who knew Fernando would be shocked to learn of his connection to the brutal stabbing. It's believed the suspect may have bragged to friends about picking up intoxicated men at bars and robbing them after they passed out. At a 2024 commemoration event, Kevin's family announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for Kevin's murder.